Ooh, it's dark today. Oh, that's better. Better-ish. Maybe. Yeah. This is my chance. Hello, my name is BethaLaRue, and how the fuck can we exercise forgiveness on a regular basis? Forgiveness is rough. I mean, everybody has a reason, for whatever reason, to be upset with someone or upset with themselves and not exercise forgiveness on a regular basis. And it seems a little... I think oftentimes the struggle with forgiveness is feeling like you're giving up, or feeling like you aren't standing up for the thing that's right. Which, I mean, in some instances, yeah, like, there isn't a reason for you to forgive another person. But I think all too often as humans, pride gets in the way, and exercising forgiveness is difficult because we feel like we're sacrificing something by doing it. That's where the issue is, right? Forgiveness is viewed as this complete self-sacrifice. Wow, bless you again. He's in his dark little hole. I think forgiveness is definitely not explained very well by the adults around us as we're growing up as kids. But the other thing is I don't think the adults around us that are teaching us what forgiveness is know what it is. Or at least know the different ways in which we as people can exercise forgiveness. Because isn't that one of the hard realities of life, is learning that the adults around us are just human? So learning, that's the first thing, right? And then we hold it against them. We hold against them that they're human beings and that they couldn't teach us correctly, which is a strange perpetual cycle. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying that I'm not, because I mean, that's why I'm going to therapy, right? Because I'm angry at all the adults that were around me and that raised me, and I have issues because they passed their issues down onto me. But another reason I'm going to therapy is to learn how to be more forgiving, even if that's not explicitly something that we talk about in therapy. For me, I mean, it's not like I go in and I go, my goal today is to forgive X person for doing this to me. How can I do it? I don't go into therapy saying that, but doing the work of therapy helps me to figure out the things that I'm okay with now that otherwise maybe 10, 5, even a couple years ago, I was just I was still bent out of shape about. And sometimes, gosh, I'm having a momentary epiphany. So I'm just gonna spit it out there while I have it in my brain. There was an instance when I was younger that I was in love with someone, but unfortunately I had a lot of crap that I had to work through. Crap that I'm still working through, in my current relationship. But this other person, I knew that or at least I had an idea that I couldn't meet their needs in that relationship. And I let them go. Now, still being in love with them and being about a year away from my frontal lobe cortex being completely developed. I held on to a lot of those feelings and still felt really bent out of shape that we weren't together. I didn't let them go for lack of love. I let them go because I loved them and I didn't want to hold them back. But I also didn't know how to deal with that and how to love someone enough that when they moved on and they started dating one of my friends, that I got really angry at them because it felt unforgivable to me that someone that I loved could be happy without me, which I know now that I have a lot of like really fucked up male-centric abandonment issues, because of the way I was raised and because of like the experience that I have as far as like with my own father and then all the different father figures that were in and out of my life. But that's not for me to put on this young man and him trying to find his happiness. It was weird though, because I was angry at them, but it wasn't their fault that they found happiness in each other. I've later come to terms, like not come to terms, but discovered that, it was better. It's better for all of us that happened, but it wasn't better for all of us that I had basically a mental breakdown and then I cussed everybody out and I reacted in a way that was not very kind. Of course, I was using all the tools that I had available to me at that time. But honestly, like, I know now that that's not the way that I would react today to that situation. I spend a lot of time thinking about that part of my life. I spend a lot of time thinking about that relationship and how it changed me and how it made me feel. That relationship helped me to know that I was worthy of kindness, that I was worthy of love, that I was capable of loving someone. And because I spend a lot of time on those memories, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I can obtain forgiveness for the things that I said or I did to them. And I honestly haven't. I've had so many times where I've gone on Facebook and I've gone on Messenger and I've thrown both their names in a messenger and I've written up like an entire dissertation about how sorry I am, because they're still together. They're married now and they're living a life together. And I've spent a lot of time being like, fuck, how do I say sorry? But we're Facebook friends. I mean, as much as you can be friends on Facebook, we notice each other in each other's lives. We read each other's posts. We like things. We comment on things. Like, even though that happened, gosh, they were big enough people to still be friends with me. I've come to the realization that maybe I'm the only one who feels like I need forgiveness in this. Because if they hadn't have forgiven me for what I had done, I feel like they may have stopped engaging with me altogether. Like, if I was so deplorable, and I'm the only person who's holding on to all the things that I have done, as the killers say. I guess that brings me to the point of, how do we learn how to forgive ourselves? Which is that process of self-love and self-acceptance, right? Because it's really hard to forgive yourself when you don't feel kind to yourself. It's hard to tell yourself that it's okay to have been unhappy and like to have reacted like so. And for instance, the way I reacted, by cutting up shirts and making angry Facebook posts and tweets and stuff, and instead of being angry at myself, recognizing that I was someone in pain who didn't know how to deal with who had very poor coping skills when it came to rejection. Even though I wasn't really rejected, like I had put myself in the situation. What are you doing? Anyways, I was a person who was hurting, who was in pain, who had very poor life coping skills, who didn't know how to handle rejection, but also hated the idea that anybody, like, I have suffered from jealousy and like insecurities with other people, finding other people more important than me, like my entire life. I feel like only recently have I been able to go, it's okay, you are still valuable. If someone, even if you're, and this hasn't like, so, but it happens a lot with my friendships, not so much in my relationships, but in my friendships a lot, where I'll be like, oh, so-and-so friend is hanging out with so-and-so friend today, and I would feel bad, and I'd be like, the fact that they're hanging out with someone else doesn't make you less valuable. And then I have to forgive myself for being jealous. It's like, it's this vicious cycle. And so that whole learning how to forgive yourself is a step of self-love, is a step of healing and growth. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with this at every age. Like, I'll talk to, some of my grandparents and stuff, and they'll talk about things that I can tell that they still have guilt over that happened years and years ago, and they have no business beating themselves up over things that happened that long ago. It's okay, like, history should always be remembered so that we avoid doing those things that have hurt, others. But we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves that we just live in this perpetual cycle of guilt, which is like the real hell, isn't it? There's this, they talk about fire and brimstone and stuff, and this idea that, religion has put in our heads about hell and like the underworld. And some people are actually, that's like a hell that people can deal with. But I honestly feel like hell is actually us trying to come to terms with the things that we've done to hurt other people. No. Someone just came over with like a saw and is doing more yard work. I'm gonna have to wait. Practice. We must practice forgiveness. He doesn't know that I'm filming this. I'll be back. We're back. They're far enough away, I think. But they were like right by my window initially. Okay. So now let's talk about forgiving other people, which is much harder sometimes. I don't know. I feel like forgiving yourself is incredibly hard. I think I have a harder time nowadays coming to terms with maybe other people. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I like to have control over things. Another product of growing up in an absolutely chaotic environment. I have a lot of control issues. But yeah, forgiving other people for me is more difficult because I don't have control over other people, which is something that I've like, I explore all the time. I'm like, Bethany, you don't have control over other people. You don't have control over the things that they do and stuff. So, I mean, being kind to myself means letting those things go, right? So let's talk about the difference between, like, say, letting something go and then something that warrants forgiveness. Letting something go is like someone cuts you off, you're driving, nobody's using a blinker, and someone swerves into your lane and cuts you off. I mean, if it causes an accident, if it's one thing, but if everybody is completely safe, you were on top of your game, you were able to slow down, everyone behind you is able to slow down, and everyone around you is safe, then that's just one of those things that eventually when you wake up the next day, most people are gonna let go. Like, that's not a thing that warrants forgiveness, really. The practice of forgiveness comes into play when there's someone in your life who has wronged you so much that their actions stick with you, that you remember this thing that they did to you, and it hurts. It hurts when you think about it. You're just in, so for instance, for me, I have a lot of hurt and a lot of pain when it comes to the neglect that I have received from my father. I have a lot of pain on that. Even more so because I have when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I confronted him about it, and he yelled at me and reprimanded me for even having asked him for even questioning him when we hadn't seen each other in years and stuff, and I was so like, why didn't you make contact? And he tried to blame me, and he tried to blame my mom, and he didn't take responsibility, and he basically told me that you're a teenager and you don't understand adult things. At this point in my life, I had already spent half of my life raising my brothers, trying to make sure that we had food in our bellies, and I was basically everything an adult was doing short of paying the bills. I think I understand. It was so hard for me to hear that. But then as I got older, I started realizing that the answers that I wanted from him, I was never going to get. He's not going to be the kind of parent that I wanted him to be. Now we're friends on Facebook, and he promotes my shows and stuff. He's introduced me to some nice people and things like that, and that's fine, and that's the kind of, he's never gonna be the kind of father that most people have. But I have plenty of great male figures in my life that are examples of the kind of, people that have stepped up in my life to be that. It's not the same. It's never gonna be the same. He does what he can. I have a hard time forgiving those past things. Like I said, at this point, I'm like, you know what? The part that I have had to, it's not okay that he didn't stay in contact. It's not okay that he blamed everything under the sun except for taking responsibility for not staying in contact. But I also recognize that he's an adult, and he likes, he says things like, I don't deal with confrontation well. Well, life is full of confrontation. I'm one of those people that will always take things head on and address an issue, and if someone has a problem with me, I want someone to talk to me about it. He's not one of those people. It's out of sight, out of mind. That's hard for me. When you come to crossroads like that, I was in so much pain and so much anger about it growing up that I would curse his name. I was so angry. I wouldn't have been able to be like Facebook friends like we are today. Like even on like that basic level, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I had so many things inside of me that I wanted to ask. So then you come to a point where I didn't start forgiving him for him. I started forgiving him for me. Again, it goes back to forgiveness, overarching, whether it's with yourself or with another person, is about self-love. I don't think you're sacrificing anything in your life if you are exercising forgiveness. And I think that's where we need to change our mindset about forgiveness. Forgiveness is about treating yourself kindly. Forgiveness is about loving yourself enough to recognize when, you know what, I'm a human being and I've done something and I forgive myself because I'm learning. I forgive myself for taking, a chance or whatever. And then I forgive you for being human. At the end of the day, we're human. It's forgiving. Forgiveness is about recognizing the humanity in yourself and recognizing the humanity in other people. And you know what? You don't have to forgive everyone all the time. If, say for instance, someone kills a family member of yours or do something that you feel is unforgivable. Forgiveness, you don't have to give it right away. Work through those emotions. There's this saying that it's called embrace the dragon, right? This is something that a friend was talking to me about because I was recently going through a rough time, and he was like, I know you, Bethany, and you're gonna start being really hard on yourself, and you're gonna try and fight the dragon before you've even had an opportunity to face it, to even look at and understand it. So he said, don't let this darkness swallow you whole. Don't let the dragon swallow you. If you freeze up, the dragon's going to swallow you. What you need to do is, before you do anything else, is embrace the dragon. Understand the dragon. Feel it. Get to know what's going on with yourself. Acknowledge the feelings that you're feeling. Do the work that it takes in order to understand what you're going through. And then once you understand it and you've taken the opportunity to go, okay, this is the situation I'm in, then you can go ahead and fight the dragon or have dinner with it or whatever. So take the time to don't be swallowed by that darkness. Understand your feelings. And then once you understand those feelings, then you can go ahead and find a place of forgiveness. That applies to forgiving others. That applies to forgiving yourself. Embracing the dragon can be applied across the board when it comes to any kind of emotion that you're feeling. But the end result should always be doing the best possible kindness to yourself that's going to help you move on to the next level or to your next, to put the dragon behind you, so to speak. So forgiveness isn't always about making sure that the other person feels good. I feel like forgiveness is a tool to help us understand and recognize the humanity in ourselves, the humanity in others, and to say, and now that we've been through this, it's time to move on. Yeah. So be okay with yourself being human, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy with where I am at with my forgiveness and where I am in my process in my life when it comes to the forgiveness that I give myself and I give others. I'm going to continue to work on it. I'm happy with that. And you should be happy too.